Welcome back to Naval Action and episode 69 of A Letter to the King. If you're new to the series, this is my attempt to keep us up to date with what's going on PvP-wise, RVR-wise on the global server, the server that never sleeps. Let's have a look at where we were at the start of the week. The Antilles was in a little bit of a mess. However, a tentative truce or treaty had been worked out between the French and the Danes, and a set of port swaps were set to happen. So let's see if that occurred. The Brits had had many failed attempts to run up hostility at Santiago, and in response the pirates had had a crack at Port-au-Prince, which had been defended by the Brits. The Americans had ceded Savannah and had not managed to take her back yet. The Brits' campaign in the Gulf was complete, and neutrality had broken out between the two nations. And that was sort of it, with the Dutch still wedged in between the sort of Eastern Antilles powers and the Brits on their other flank. Let's have a look at the political situation, and there's been a couple of changes this week. So of course the Brits and the Americans have gone back to neutrality. The Brits are still at war with the pirates, and by all accounts the French, although the French port-wise are somewhat dislocated. That hasn't limited them to sailing around and causing trouble and mayhem wherever the Brits like to play. Probably the biggest change, it does appear that the pirates and the French have an alliance, or certain clans do at least, in that the French clans were actively anti-ing British activity around pirate waters. Now, whether or not this is anything more than just a couple of clans deciding to pitch in and help their pirate brethren, it's difficult to know. And apart from that, that's probably about it for the changes in status. We can probably say that the Danes and French right now are at a neutral non-aggression point. So let's have a look at what happened RVR-wise this week. And first of all, winter has come. Because the first 5 days of the week were super quiet, probably the lowest amount of activity we've had since the reset as far as port flips were concerned. The Brits had another couple of faulted attempts at running up hostility at Santiago. Islamadora, there was a few attempts to run up hostility here, and by all accounts in Savannah there was a bit of an attempt to run up hostility there, but all of it was quashed by the pirates. So let's have a look at where the actual action was, and really it wasn't until the weekend dawn that we started to get some stuff happening. Now the Danes and the French did their port swapping very much as planned, and although I think it's fragile, there is definitely peace at the moment between the French and the Danes, tentative as it is, and always one clan's misdemeanor away from sparking up again. So these guys have done their port swaps. The Swedes, are poor buggers, are back to just the 4, but that's probably more than they've got the players-wise. The Danes and the French have détente, and they've subdivided the Antilles between them. And probably the big question is, where will the French go next? They clearly want to take it out on the Brits, but to do so will either require a campaign on the southern side of the map, or a very long-range strike at one of the British ports. So that'll be interesting to see what the French do, and it does put the Dutch in a bit of a tricky situation. They could always decide to side with the French and the Danes, but the French have been causing a lot of trouble for the Dutch, and so that's not overly likely to happen. But at the same time, now that the Danes and the French are allied, it probably means the more powerful French could, if they wanted to, put the push on the Dutch. And as we'll see, with the British very much entertained elsewhere on the map, that would leave the Dutch in the lurch. So they really are between a rock and a hard place, the cloggies at the moment. The first big action of the week came with the pirates bunging hostility on at Port-au-Prince again. They then rocked up with a fleet. We'll talk about how the fleet gets into the port later on, but probably what's really worth noting is that the pirates sent in 23 ships, or 23 ships made it in against the British 25. Both fleets were mostly Aggies, with the odd Connie and maybe a fifth rate. The Brits had a far superior fleet, but it was made up of 8 different clans, and the pirates were almost entirely a single clan. And, you know, the old adage that, you know, one fist is more powerful than 10 fingers. The cohesion of the pirate fleet really was greater than the higher numbers of the British fleet. The British fleet got caught a little bit on the turn. The pirates swept in as one, and within 10 minutes of the first sort of damaging cannon shots fired, the Brits had lost 4 ships. They'd lost the advantage on numbers, and the pirates had the sort of the cut and thrust of the battle. And it ended up being a great port battle win for the pirates. They ended up not losing a single ship and sinking 8 British ships, or 7 and 1 captured. So a thumping great victory to the pirates, and really one that you have to put down to the cohesion of what was mostly a single clan against a bunch of folks who were thrown together by little more than the fact that they flew Her Majesty's colours, His Majesty's colours, and had a 4th rate to hand. There were a large number of British screeners, but pirate tactics basically put them straight out of the game, and we'll talk about that in a moment because I don't want to water down the victory. Now, the pirates, bless their socks, which are made of cotton, then the cheeky buggers raised hostility at Savannah-la-Mar, and they did this in super quick time. And although they rocked up in a time where the Brits have got reasonable numbers on, probably, you know, the two nations have good comparative numbers on, the pirates rocked up with a 23-man first-rate fleet. I think there might have been a couple of second rates in there, but predominantly a first-rate fleet with perhaps a couple of bucks and the likes in there, a couple of second rates in there. And the Brits just didn't have that much heavy metal on at the time. And what ended up being a pretty easy win for the pirates, again, despite superior screening forces for the Brits. And this has obviously been a bit pesky for the Brits, but 2 good wins for the pirates, and the pirates are probably showing that they're the guys to beat at the moment. They've got a large cohesive clan that's working together, that's well shipped up, and apart from a couple of losses outside the port proper, very much an unblemished day for the pirate forces, taking 2 of the British forces, and now they are parked in the heartlands of both their enemies, in Savannah with the US, and the light places that are called Savannah, and at Savannah-la-Mar. And really the only thing the Americans and the Brits can do is make their stay as unwelcome as possible. But I think the pirates are going to have a merry old time of it in the next week or so, and we'll have to see how the Brits respond. The Dutch, not really. They ran up a little bit of hostility, they squished a bit of hostility, but nothing much more than that. The Spanish don't exist for all intents and purposes. And the Americans, they did run up a hostility at Savannah-la-Mar, but it got put down real quick. I can only postulate that a large pirate fleet, about a couple of hours after the taking of Pap, rocked up at Savannah-la-Mar and ground it back down, maybe with a bit of PvP action while they were at it. The pirate anti-hostility tactics are very strong and hard to combat. They rock up in a large number of first rates and basically snot local AI fleets, or if the locals throw 5th rates at them, then it's like PvP points for fun, really. Now, there's been a lot of QQ and finger pointing and scuttlebutt about the fact that the pirates use their outlaw battles so that they can open up a battle, or they tag an alt, or they tag an AI fleet. So there's 3 different ways of doing it, really, and then they sit in that battle for an hour and a half prior to entering port. Now, to some extent, the pirates with the outlaw battles are taking a bit of a risk in that anyone can join those for a considerable amount of time. But of course, the outlaw battles are just that, so you'd have to be pretty brave putting in 24 first rates on the defending side, because it's every man for themselves in there. And of course, if you don't notice the battle for half an hour, they've sailed further away than any first rate could ever get. So it is, you know, I don't really want to get myself 2 billion thumbs down, but it is sort of an exploit of gaming mechanics. they rocked up at Savannah Lamar and did the same. They parked off the coast and kicked off a battle. I'm pretty sure they sailed down there before shutdown and kicked off an outlaw battle there. And, you know, you've got 24, 25 first rates in there. It's pretty hard for the defending forces 3 hours before a battle to get in there. But the pirates are showing commitment. You know, they are spending 3 to 5 hours prepping for these things. And defenders against these tactics, the Americans have fallen foul to them, so with the Brits twice now. You're going to have to get their shit together, really, and be prepared to get stuck in and risk a bit of wood. I think that's the pirates' strength. They're prepared to put their first rates on the line all the time, and I think some of the other nations are a little bit more reticent to throw their big ships at the pirates. I'm not a big fan of the fact that it's a wee bit of an exploit, but there is a weakness in the game at the moment that it's very difficult to get a big fleet through screeners because the ROE is very silly. Now, as I'm literally recording this, the new battle mechanics have popped up, and the new battle mechanics a part of the latest patch, probably the last patch before we get the big engine update. I'll talk about this a little later. And I haven't really had time to digest them because they popped up literally in the last 5 minutes. So I'll cover those in next week's Letter to the King. But once again, conquest marks change. We've got victory marks now. It's going to be based on PvP kills, and it's going to be based on how many ports you've actually taken, and you're going to lose stuff for ports you've lost. So, yet again, more twisting and turning in the mechanics, but let's hope it gets balanced. I know that the port flipping that's been going on will no longer be profitable. So we'll have to see how that goes. Open world hotspots, well, they're all pretty predictable, to be honest. It's wherever the pirates and French decide to hassle predominantly the Brits and the Americans. With the Dutch probably copying a bit from the French as well. So the French are popping up at some of the British southern holdings. They're also messing around with the Dutch. The pirates are giving the Americans a good tally-hoing up and down the coast of Florida. And the Brits, the pirates and the French are exchanging timber around Port Royal and around the Freetown that sort of sits between KPR, Cuba and Haiti. So there's plenty of open world PvP to have, and you know, it can be great fun as well. I've had some crackers this week. Where are the hotspots going to be? Well, again, this might not be this treaty could hold, this truce could hold, and we'll be able to remove this next week. I think there's going to be a bit of pressure here. A wild card guess might say that the Frenchies might come and wind the Brits up here, while the Brits have this. I photoshopped this just when it was flashing, so I didn't get the colours on Savannah Lamar. But these 3 ports have fallen to the pirates, so there's going to be pressure on all the British holdings around here, and of course constant pressure on the Americans from the pirates up north. So some other bits and bobs. So one more important release soon, and in fact it's not soon, it's now. So if you jump on the forums, let me just drag it across. If you jump on the forums, you'll see that they've put a post in Games Lab's forums. Patch 10.4 has landed, possibly the last patch before they update us to the Unity 5 engine, which will also allow them to bring more ships back into the game. I need to read this, although I'm just showing you that it's there. I actually haven't read the whole thing myself. It literally popped up as I was kicking off my recording. Thank you, Mr. BP. So the Unity 5 engine's coming. We're currently on the Unity 4 engine. They've actually hit object limit problems, which is why some of the ships haven't been re-added to the game. The Unity 5 is a true 64-bit engine, so A, we should get better FPS, B, we should get lovelier, sexier, nicer graphics, and smoother graphics, and C, we can have more objects in our universe, in our gaming universe. And that's really handy, and it will allow us to get some of those ships back that we'd missed out on. Now, the other point of note, and this was announced last week, literally as I was going to press again, so I think the devs have decided the best time to pass on information is while I'm making Letter to the King. And I will put a link for this in the description, but you can now lodge an application to be part of the closed testing for NA Legends. So NA Legends, probably without wanting to cause any copyright problems, is fundamentally sort of a World of Warships or World of Tanks version of naval action. So it won't have an open world, it will be purely arena based. So think about the sea trials, those of you old salty dogs who were part of the sea trials. And we'll have to see if that proves to be good, and will it have an impact on the open world player base. The idea of being able to jump in and get a 15-on-15 battle, or whatever the numbers will be, is certainly attractive, especially if you've only got an hour to give up. We'll have to see how that's going. Numbers have been steady player-wise on Global again, and I think probably the headline of the week has to be that the pirate forces on the global server are definitely on the rise. Let's have a quick look at the tally of splinters, sail and blood. So the Brits lost 9 ports with the loss of Pap and Savannah Lamar. The pirates gained the yang to that ying. I've duffed up my numbers here, but basically the French and the Danes swapped a pants load of ports between them. One of them was -3. I think the Danes lost a couple of ports, but they did a whole bunch of port swapping. And the Dutch, the Americans, the Swedes and the Spanish had no action, as it were. And so that's it for this week's naval action. However, a little bit of a sad note to end on, it was announced today that one of the US players on Global had passed away, Dutch Master. I saw some very nice words on the forums, and so Admiralty's running the British flag at half-mast, and rest in peace, Dutch Master. We are a small gaming community, and it's very sad when we lose a player, so 07 Dutch Master. And that's it for this week's naval action. Next week I'll make sure I cover the new patch and try and get my head around all the mechanics and what it might mean for us all. See if we get a bit more information on the new arena game, and also see if we get some more information on how long it's going to take them to flip us up to the Unity 5 engine. Alrighty, so give us a like, give us a subscribe. I'll catch you on the ocean, and I will see you.